Hey guys, this is Dalton with the All Around channel. Hockey is back. This weekend, the NHL returns to play, so I'm here to give you a breakdown of how that's all going to work out with the return to play format, the impacts of the pandemic, breakdown of each team, and some predictions. So, let's get right into it. So for the format, they've expanded the playoff to 24 teams. So out of the 31 teams in the league, 24 have made it, 12 from each conference. The other 7 have been eliminated. The top 4 teams in each conference will play a round robin to determine seeding. The next 5 through 12 will play a best of 5 play-in series. 5 seed plays the 12 seed, 6 plays 11, and so on. The winners will advance to the 8-team playoff in each conference, and the losers will enter the draft lottery. After that, the playoffs are going to reseed like they normally would, so after each round, the top seed plays the lowest seed, and so on. Alright, so the first thing we got to talk about are the effects of the pandemic. We have a really long layover here, about a little over 4 months in between the pause in March and the games this weekend. So that really has caused some interesting impacts, we'll say. The first thing is any momentum that teams were building back in March, it's gone. So teams that were really starting to get hot before the playoffs have totally cooled off by now, more than likely. I mean, we'll see when the games start, but there's really no way teams can keep the momentum that they had going. Another big thing are injuries. So there are some big name players that were looking like they weren't going to be able to play for the rest of the season that are now going to be back. So that's going to have some huge implications, and we'll get into some of the specific players that's going to have impacted and their teams later on. The next thing we got to talk about are the positive COVID tests. So far, the bubble method that the NHL is using is working. They haven't really had any issues with positive tests so far, but more than likely it's going to happen at some point. So, at some point, someone's going to test positive, and they're going to miss games. That's just going to be something teams are going to have to deal with, and the NHL is going to have to deal with. Hopefully there's no huge outbreaks, but more than likely individual players are going to end up missing games for COVID at some point. As I mentioned, we're doing the bubble system, which means neutral sites for all the games. The Eastern Conference is playing all of its games in Toronto, and the Western Conference is playing in Edmonton. There's no fans at these games. Home ice advantage has been totally eliminated, so having a higher seed used to mean, you get a couple extra games, potentially a game 7 in your series at home in front of a roaring home crowd. That used to be a huge advantage. That's not going to be around this playoffs, so we'll see what kind of impact that has. Finally, there's some huge lottery implications with this format. So they've already determined the positioning for the top draft picks. So what they did is they did a lottery with the top 7 picks, or the 7 eliminated teams, and 1 mystery team to take the top 8 picks. The mystery team will be determined after we find out which 8 teams get eliminated in those play-in series. So that mystery team only had a 2.5% chance at getting the number 1 overall pick. But lo and behold, they got it. So the other 7 teams are going to be picking 2 through 8. That are the 7 that are already eliminated. They're picking 2 through 8. The number 1 pick is going to go to one of these 8 teams that have yet to be eliminated. So, in theory, a top 10 team in the league like the Pittsburgh Penguins could get knocked out in the play-in series and end up with the number 1 overall pick. Because those 8 teams that get eliminated, each one's going to have a 12.5% chance at getting the number 1 pick. Everyone else will be somewhere from 9 through 16. Or 9 through 15, I mean. So that's going to have some big implications, especially because this year's draft has the presumed number 1 overall pick to be Alex Lafreniere, who is possibly going to be a generational talent like a Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid. So if a top team ends up getting that pick, that could be huge. So that's just something extra that's going to be really interesting and just adds another little wrinkle to the play-in series that makes them a little bit more interesting. Let's start off with the Eastern Conference first round. First, we'll look at the round-robin teams. Those are the Boston Bruins, the Washington Capitals, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Philadelphia Flyers. The number one seed in all this is the Boston Bruins. Heading into the stoppage, they were the best team in the NHL. They had the best record, awarding them the President's Trophy. They have a loaded roster at all three levels: goalie, defense, forward, everywhere. They got a ton of talent. They have a heavy veteran presence, a lot of guys with playoff experience. That could be huge in this, in any playoff series. That's big, but especially in this unorthodox format, I think it could really be a crucial part for them. Their X factor is Patrice Bergeron. He's one of the league's best two-way forwards, which is going to be crucial, I think, in these first few games, because more than likely we're going to see a lot of sloppy up and down play, lots of turnovers. So you're going to want guys that can quickly take advantage of these turnovers and get some odd man rushes. And on the other side, you want guys that can get back and prevent those odd man rushes. So I think Bergeron's a guy that's going to do both of those things for the Bruins, and so I think he's going to excel in these first couple of games that end up being really back and forth. Up next, we got the Capitals. They have the best forward in the East in Ovechkin, the best D-man in the East in Carlson, and a top three goalie in the East in Braden Holtby. That star power could really carry them all the way to the Cup. I mean, the X factor for them is obviously Alex Ovechkin. I mean, there's nobody else in the entire league that can carry a team like he does. I mean, yeah, Crosby's good, Tarasenko's good, but they're not the kind of guys that are going to carry their teams. They have a lot around them. Ovechkin, other than a couple other really talented players, for the most part, the roster as a whole isn't great. Ovechkin makes that roster way, way better because he can just take games over unlike anybody else. In these first couple games, that could be huge. The Lightning are up next. They have a young team. Bulk of the roster's under 30. Their top players are all in their prime years, still late 20s or 30 at the most. The X factor for them is Victor Hedman. He's Norris contender before the pandemic. He was day-to-day with a lower body injury when the league stopped play. Now he's fully healthy. I think that's going to be important for them because they really need a guy like him to be a threat from the blue line. That opens up guys like Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov because they need someone creating shots from up top to take the attention off of their snipers down low. And then we got the Philadelphia Flyers. League's hottest team before the pandemic. All that momentum is totally stifled, unfortunately for them. Another thing that's weird with the pandemic is the Flyers were a great home team, but about an average road team. So it's hard to tell if the bubble's going to be good or bad for them because they're not going to get that true home ice experience, but they're also not going to really play any true road games. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. They have a very strong middle six. They're with guys like Kevin Hayes, Scott Laughton, Michael Raffle, James Van Riemsdyk. These are guys that are really good glue guys for any good team. So I think that's a really big advantage for the Flyers, having their second and third forward lines having so much scoring potential there is really big, I think. The X factor for them is Carter Hart. His play really coincides with team struggles. When he's good at home, they've been good at home. He's been not great on the road. They've been not great on the road as a team. So I think, how he plays could really determine what this team does in this playoff. Finally, my prediction for the round robin. I got the Capitals winning it. I think they're going to end up with the number one seed. They have too much star power to give them an edge in these single game situations. The Bruins, I'll still get the number 2 seed, I think. They just have a good veteran presence. Should help them get out to a strong start. Flyers are going to need to rebuild some momentum, but I think they'll still finish third in this round robin because their run and gun style of play should help in the early games. On the other hand, the Lightning, who I have finishing fourth, I think are going to really take some time to get going. Their style of play relies heavily on passing to open up those snipers. That passing might not be sharp in these first couple games, so their offense might struggle a little bit in the beginning. So, Capitals, Bruins, Flyers, Lightning. That's my top four. And then in the play-in rounds, we'll start off with the 5-seed Pittsburgh Penguins and the 12-seeded Montreal Canadiens. Penguins are another veteran team with lots of talent and championship experience. If they were in the Western Conference, they'd probably be a top 4 team. But they're in the East, so they got to play in the play-in round. The X factor for them is Evgeny Malkin. They need good second-line pressure, especially in this series, because they're going up against a really good goalie for the Canadiens in Carey Price, who if he gets hot, they're going to really need to keep putting pressure on him after that first line comes off. So they're going to need guys like Malkin to really keep that offense going and keep getting pucks to the net. The Canadiens, they lack really having playoff talent. That's why they're the 12th seed. But, in this situation, they luck out and they get a chance to compete. They could get hot, like I said. They have a great goalie in Carey Price. When he's at his best, he can steal games. If he gets hot, the Canadiens could be a real threat. My prediction, though, Penguins in 4. They just have too much talent. Price could nab Montreal a win, but I don't see it being enough for them to take that series. Up next, we got the 6-seeded Carolina Hurricanes and the 11-seeded New York Rangers. The Canes, they have made some big deadline deals for Shea, Trocheck, and Vatanen. That should give them juice for this team to really contend. They got a lot of guys healthy in Hamilton, Pesce, Vatanen, Mrazek, and Reimer, the goalies. They're all back, and that's the big X factor for the Hurricanes. Mrazek and/or Reimer, they're going to have to step up for this team to have a chance to make a deep run. They haven't had good goaltending for most of the season, and, those guys have been banged up. But even when those guys have been healthy, they don't really inspire too much confidence. So for them to really make a deep run, they're going to need strong play out of those guys. On the other side, the Rangers, they have some emerging superstars in Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad. Big question for them is who will start in goal. Will it be Lundqvist, Shesterkin, or Georgiev? I think it'll end up being Heinrich because he's just got too much experience in the playoffs. It just makes sense. The X factor for them is Chris Kreider. He's a veteran presence among a young group of forwards, provides a lot of scoring depth. I think they're going to need a guy like him to really help get them through some of these series, especially this first one. My prediction, Rangers in 5. The Canes are going to need time to gel with all these guys getting back from injury. I just think it's going to be too quick of a series for them to really get going. The goaltending edge with Heinrich Lundqvist really puts the Rangers over the top, I think, too. But it should be a tight series. I got the Rangers, though, in 5. Up next, the Islanders, the number 7 seed, and the 10-seeded, Florida Panthers. The Islanders don't have too much star power, nothing really flashy about this team, but before the pandemic, they were quietly grinding their way into the playoff picture. So, this is a team that, there's nothing really that special about them, but they're winning. Big reason for that is Matthew Barzal. Can he really break out and become a superstar? He's been a star for the Islanders, but can he be a star in this league? That's what we got to find out. If that happens, watch out for the Islanders. On the other side, the Panthers, this season has not gone as planned. They had a big goaltender signing in the offseason in Sergei Bobrovsky. He has been a huge disappointment. This team's drifted out of contention. They became sellers at the deadline, getting rid of Vincent Trocheck, which really has taken away a lot of scoring depth for them. The X factor for them is Noel Acieri, with Trocheck gone, he's got to step up. The team needs more production beyond those top guys for them to have any kind of a chance. Ultimately, looking at this series, despite all that, I have the Panthers in 5. Toss-up series, but I think this long layover could help the Panthers reset. They really, on paper, have a lot more talent than the Islanders, and I think with this layover, it hurts the Islanders' momentum, gives the Panthers a chance to reset. In a tight series, I give Florida the edge. Finally, the 8-seeded Maple Leafs and the 9-seeded Blue Jackets. Toronto's roster is loaded with talent, but their play hasn't really reflected that. They've been a very streaky up and down team, and they really need to settle down and start playing like this roster looks on paper. The X factor for them is Freddie Anderson. He's been playing close to Vezina contention level. He could really carry this team when they're not playing well. That's kind of what he's done throughout this season. So I think, even if their stars aren't playing up to par, he can bail them out of some games. On the other side, the Blue Jackets, they're just a perfectly average team. They got lots of really good players, no true superstars. The X factor for this team is Seth Jones. Leads the team in plus-minus. He's got to find a way to will his team to wins. He's got to help out the goalie on defense, find ways to create offense from the blue line. Can he emerge and really break out as a star in this league? If he can, that could be something that really puts the Blue Jackets over the top. My prediction for this series, though, Leafs in 4. They have far superior talent. They'll likely slip up and give it game away, but they should still be able to take care of this series without too much trouble and having to go 5 games. Ultimately, I think they pull it out. So if those predictions turn out to be correct, here's how the quarterfinals will look like. First, we'll have the 1-seeded Capitals against the 11-seeded Rangers. The 2-seeded Bruins will be taking on the 10-seed Panthers. The 3-seeded Flyers will take on the 8-seed Maple Leafs. And the 4-seeded Lightning will take on the 5-seeded Penguins. Moving on to the Western Conference, the round robin, we got the Blues, the Avalanche, Golden Knights, and the Stars. Up first, the number 1 seed St. Louis Blues. They're reigning Stanley Cup champions. They're highly talented in every phase of the game. They're first place in the West, despite not having Vlad Tarasenko since late October when he went down with an injury. He's obviously their X factor. He'll be fully healthy for the playoffs. When he's healthy, he's top 5 player in the league. He could turn St. Louis into an unstoppable force. Next, the Avalanche. They have a high-octane offense led by Nathan MacKinnon, who's having a dominant season. They've also got a really competent goaltending tandem in Francouz and Hutchinson. The X factor for them, Mikko Rantanen. He's back from injury, which is really important because Nate Mack needs a running mate on that top line. Landeskog's good, but he won't fill the back of the net at a high volume like Rantanen can, so I think that's really important. Third, we got the Vegas Golden Knights. They're just a deep, well-balanced team, laden with veterans. That's how this team was built in the expansion draft a couple years ago. They're just built for deep playoff runs. However, this year did not go well at the beginning. They made a mid-season coaching change, firing Gerard Gallant, bringing in Peter DeBauer. Since then, the team has gone 15-5-2. The X factor for them is Robin Lehner, who they added at the trade deadline, bringing him in from Chicago. That's really important because their current starting goaltender, Marc-Andre Fleury, is 35, and while he has gone on deep playoff runs, won cups with the Penguins, he might not have any more of that playoff magic left in the tank. Lehner was really solid for a below-average Blackhawks team, so, they could bring him in and maybe he platoons with Fleury, or maybe he even just fully takes over. We'll see what happens when the play starts. Finally, we got the Stars. With an average age of 29, it's 2 years above the league average. They're an older team, a lot of veterans, but what's nice for them is those veterans aren't their key producers. Most of their top production guys are relatively young still, so they have the vets for leadership, but they don't have to rely on them for production. I think that's a really good combo. The X factor for them is second-year player Miro Heiskanen. He's an emerging star in this league, and he could really help this team finally get over the hump and get them past the conference semis for the first time since 2008. Here's my prediction for the round robin. I got the Avalanche coming out with the number 1 seed. That offensive firepower should help them get a quick start and jump out into that number 1 seed. The Blues are still going to get the number 2 seed. They're just too good, but it might take a little bit of time for Tarasenko to get going. But the team did not lose in regulation to either the Stars or the Golden Knights during the regular season, so I think they should be able to get past them and get that 2 seed. 3, I have the Stars. This weird format, is going to definitely take away the importance of that veteran experience, I think. I don't know, maybe it could be good, but I think that they don't have that whole been there, done that experience because nobody's been here before. This is totally new. So we'll see how much that really helps them, but I still think they get the 3 seed because the 4-seeded Golden Knights, they have a losing record against all the other teams in this round robin, so it's going to be really hard for them to all of a sudden start beating these teams. They weren't able to do it in the regular season. I don't see them doing it in the playoffs here, so I still have them taking the 4 seed. Looking at the first play-in round game, we got the Oilers and the Blackhawks. The 5-seeded Edmonton Oilers boast the league's best power play and the league's second best penalty kill. They've been great on special teams all year, which is huge. They have a really talented big 3 in McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins. The X factor for them, though, is James Neal. Neal has experience going on deep playoff runs, which that big 3 doesn't really have, and that team in general doesn't really have. Neal's won cups with teams like the Penguins, so he has that experience that the Oilers need, and he also can provide some offensive production beyond that big 3, which I think is also really important. They need some scoring depth, and I think Neal will help provide that here. On the other side, the Blackhawks, they've been really having an abysmal season. They're clearly rebuilding. The fact that they're here is just really unexpected, but the way this format is set up, they get a shot at a cup just like everyone else, and we'll see what happens. I think expectations should be low, though. The X factor for them is Corey Crawford, and with Leonard traded away, it's all on him. And he's been okay this year, hasn't been his usual elite self. If he can get back to that form, who knows? Maybe they could steal this first play-in round, and then from there, who knows? But I don't really see that happening. My prediction here, Oilers in 3. It's really hard for Chicago players to feel like they have a chance with the way the season is gone. I mean, the organization's clearly looking to next year, so it's hard for them to think they have a chance. I think they pack it in, get swept, and go home. Up next, the 6-seeded Nashville Predators and the 11-seeded Arizona Coyotes. The Predators are a team that's built from the back. They have 3 lines deep on defense everywhere. All 6 guys, very solid. They have 2 really good goaltenders, so they have options there. And that defense is going to need to be strong because they don't have a whole lot of offensive firepower, so they really need to be strong from the back. And they're going to need to get scoring from X-Factor Roman Josi, who's a Norris front runner. And while he's going to have to carry the defense, he's also going to have to help out on offense. He's going to have to do a lot for this team to go far. On the other side, the Coyotes are also one of the best defensive teams in the league. So they're going to have this is going to be a very low scoring series, I have a feeling. Reason why the Coyotes are so good on defense is because Darcy Kemper, their goalie, has just been phenomenal this year. The X factor for this team, Phil Kessel, veteran scorer. He was acquired last summer in the Galchenyuk trade. He's been battling a groin injury, should be fully healthy now. The Coyotes really need him to step up and provide an offensive boost. Ultimately, though, my prediction here, Predators in 4. It should be a defensive struggle, but the Predators have a little bit more offensive firepower. I think they get it done, and they get it done without going the full 5 games. Up next, 7-seeded Canucks and the 10-seeded Wild. Vancouver have a strong top 6 forwards. Markstrom's playing well in net. The X factor for them, though, is Alex Edler. He's the best D-man on the team by far. But he also leads the team in penalty minutes with 62. He's got to stay on the ice, give this team more stability on the blue line. If he can do that, this is a solid team, and they can make some noise here. Looking at the Wild, they're solid offensively. They have a positive goal differential. The season, though, has just been marred by injuries. And they're now just starting to get everyone back, and then the pandemic hit. They're fully healthy now, so that could be huge. The X factor for them, though, is Capo Kakkonen. He's a rookie goalie who looked good in his 5 starts this season. The other 2 goalies, Dubnyk and Stalock, have been hit or miss, so Kakkonen could get thrust into duty here and steal the show. I mean, they're going to need a goalie to really step up there, and the other 2 don't look like they're going to do it. So maybe the rookie can just come in and be a force, get hot, and carry this team deep into the playoffs. My prediction for this series are the Wild in 4. They just look like a team that's ready to go on a surprise run. They've been really laying low all year, and this weird format gets them to sneak into the playoffs, gives them a chance. I could just see them being a team that could really catch fire here. And also, the Canucks are just a team that don't inspire a lot of confidence. So, I really like the Wild to take this, and in 4 games, too. Finally, we get the 8-seeded Calgary Flames and the 9-seeded Winnipeg Jets. The Flames are the 8th seed, despite having a negative goal differential this year. They've been carried by a 6-1 record in shootouts. That's been a huge boost for them. Also, X Factor Matthew Tkachuk is an emerging star in this league, and he's really been a big help for them. He needs to be dominant for this team to make noise in the playoffs. On the other side, we got the Winnipeg Jets. This team's looked strong for the most part, but they've been hurt by several 3+ game losing streaks, which has really hurt their record and forced them into the 9 seed. The X factor for them, though, is goalie Connor Hellebuyck. He's the favorite to win the Vezina Trophy, and he could carry this team all the way to the Cup. He's that good. My prediction for this series is Jets in 3. The Jets are a team that have underperformed all season, while the Flames are a team that have overperformed all season. I think now with this reset, both teams are going to start looking more like how they're supposed to, and if that's the case, the Jets are clearly a superior team, and they're going to take this in a sweep. Here's how I think the Western Conference is going to shape up. You got the 1-seeded Avalanche taking on the 10-seeded Wild, number 2 Blues against number 9 Jets, 3-seeded Stars, the 6-seeded Predators, and finally the 4-seeded Golden Knights and the 5-seeded Oilers. So that's how I think the first round of the NHL playoffs is going to turn out. And that wraps up this video. I'll come back to you guys once this round wraps up, and we'll look at what the quarterfinals actually look like and break down those. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.